In this video, I'm going to take you through making the same soap recipe using both hot process and cold process so that you can see how they're different. If you're interested in making soap, you may find that one method is more appealing to you. I didn't know about hot process when I started making soap, and I find that I really enjoy it. In this recipe, I'm using the lard that I rendered in December, and it makes a beautiful hard bar of soap. I'm also going to use coconut oil and olive oil. So this is a very simple recipe, but I'm going to add some fun stuff too. The first soap we're going to make is the hot process version. First, I'm going to get my oils measured and into the crock pot so that they can start melting and getting to know one another. I've also measured out a little extra olive oil that I'm going to add at the end of the cook. While the oils are melting, I'm going to mix the lye solution. I have a teaspoon of sugar in this pitcher. Sugar is just a lather booster. If you're going to use it, you want to dissolve it in your liquid before you add the lye. Otherwise, it will not dissolve and you'll just have a mess. I'm replacing most of the water for the lye solution with aloe vera juice, and once the sugar is dissolved, I'm adding a pinch of silk. When I add the lye, the solution will get hot enough that the silk will just melt. I like to measure the sodium hydroxide into a little sandwich bag if I'm not making a super big batch. This is something great for beginners to do too, because it will help you remember that the lye is added to the water and you won't accidentally add the water to the lye. So make sure you know how to handle lye safely, as it is caustic and it can hurt you if you're not careful. Another fun additive I'm using in this recipe is cucumber. I have some cucumber puree that I keep in the freezer, and I'm adding that to my lye solution. I probably should have added it to the oils, but I didn't. The color immediately morphed into this crazy orange color. Sometimes fresh ingredients behave in unexpected ways, but I have learned to be patient and not freak out for the most part. To the oils, I'm going to add colloidal oats and some French green clay. I thought the soft green color of this clay would go perfectly with the cucumber, and I'm going to stick blend those in really well and make sure I don't end up with any clumps in my soap. Now I'm ready to add the lye solution, and I like to blend until this comes to trace. You could just blend it until it emulsifies, but I personally think it shortens the cook time if you blend to trace. I could be wrong about that, so don't quote me. Because the lid for this crock pot does not seal against the pot, I'm going to cover it tightly with some plastic wrap, and then I just let it cook. I'm adding a couple of teaspoons of plain Greek yogurt to that extra olive oil, and I'll set it beside the crock pot so that the residual heat will bring this up to room temperature before I add it to the soap. And because my crock pot is so small, I have to stir this down every so often to keep it from escaping. Right now we're at applesauce stage and it's really liquidy. When I came back to it a few minutes later, it was more like mashed potatoes. And then finally it gets sort of viscous like Vaseline. And I did a pH test, and you can see the pH is between an 8 and a 9. So at this point, saponification has happened and we have soap. So I'm going to turn off the heat and add the olive oil, superfat, and yogurt. This will help bring the temperature down before I add my fragrance oil. Originally, I was going to use a different fragrance. You may have noticed it sitting there beside the crock pot, but when I checked the flash point of that fragrance, the temperature at which the scent burns off, it was really low, like 115 degrees, I think. If I were to let this soap get that cool before I add the fragrance, I would never get it blended in and I would never get it in the mold. So I decided to go with this cashmere fragrance oil from Brambleberry. It's cozy and warm and I just love it. And the flash point is much higher, 180 degrees Fahrenheit if I remember correctly. Once the soap has cooled enough, I'm going to add the fragrance oil and work as quickly as I can to get the soap into the mold. It's thick, and gloppy, and you have to like bang it down on the counter to get the air pockets out. I always have an extra mold on hand for any excess, so I'm going to fill up several of these round molds as well. Because this is already soap, it is perfectly safe for me to handle with my bare hands. It's just still really hot at this point. Now for the cold process method. I melted the hard oils together in the microwave in short bursts and then added the olive oil. Then I decided I'm going to separate this batter, and I'll add the green clay to that separated portion for a swirl. So I'm adding the oats just like before, and now I'm adding the lye solution that I mixed just like before with the sugar, silk, aloe, and cucumber, and it still came out that same funky orange color. Now I'm going to blend this until it comes to trace. Oh, and I went ahead and added the cashmere fragrance oil that I used in the last batch. Then I split the batter, and I'm going to add the clay to the little pitcher. I blended this a little long, and my batter was getting pretty thick when I got it in the mold, but I went ahead and did a hanger swirl, and the rest I put into the round molds. That hot process soap is already pretty solid at this point. I came back and used a chopstick to add a little texture to the top of the loaf. This is something you really can't do with hot process soap, or at least I can't. Now this is not soap yet. Unlike with the hot process method, this batter has not completed saponification, so you do not want to handle this with your bare hands. It wouldn't be like handling pure lye, but I imagine it would be pretty irritating on your skin. Now we'll come back the next day and unmold the soaps. The hot process round bars came out of the mold super easy. They are solid as a rock, and the color is beautiful, not orangey at all. The cold process round bars have a little soda ash on top. That's that white powdery stuff. It's not a problem, it's just pretty ugly. They're still a little soft and tacky, so I decided to wait and unmold those a different day. And now for the loaves. The hot process loaf is hard and not tacky at all. The top is, well, I love it. Some people may not like that rustic, kind of rough looking top, but I do. I think it's lovely. And this soap is ready to use, but it would still benefit from a cure time, probably at least a couple of weeks. Allowing all the excess moisture to evaporate will increase how long your soap lasts in the shower or tub or wherever you use it. And that applies to cold process soap as well, but since it doesn't release moisture in a cook, it needs to cure for a lot longer. Also, this cold process soap is still going through saponification, which can take up to 72 hours. You can see the swirls, but they are very light. However, the fragrance oil that I used is going to cause this lighter color to continue to darken, and you can see in the final photo that it is quite tan, but it's still a beautiful bar of soap with a wonderful lather.